Good afternoon, everybody. Can y'all hear me? Yes? Can you hear me well? I don't want to have to yell. All right, perfect. Thank you all for your patience. My name is Mikkel Scott. I am one of the constituent services managers for Elevate Florida. I'm also here with my team member, Jermaine Graham, who's one of the constituent coordination representatives. And we're grateful to be here with you all today to talk a little bit more about Elevate Florida. Ashley's going to be my collaborator today and help me with my slideshow. And we hope that this information is informative for you all to better understand Elevate Florida. So what I'll be doing is giving you a program overview. Essentially what we're going to get into, Ashley, if you move to that next slide, it's going to be a complete program overview of Elevate. It's going to let you know more things about eligibility, what the requirements are, what some of the responsibilities are from you as homeowners. We're also going to go through the program process, which is going to allow for you to understand the timeline, what you need to do as far as the different triggers that are there for your action, as well as the different inspections, assessments, and some of the things that are going to take place during that period of you being an applicant. We're also going to cover the property owner cost share. Many of you all probably know this is a cost share program, so there's a cost savings to you all. 75% of the program will be paid by the grant funding, and then the other 25% will be paid by the homeowner. We'll talk about some ways that that might be a little bit less of a responsibility for cost on your part during the presentation, but that's a general understanding of what that cost share will be. And then finally, we'll open it up for a Q&A. That'll give you guys a chance to answer. Well, I'll answer and you can ask me some questions. And if I don't have that answer, we'll certainly take them down. What we're doing is getting everybody's contact information. So if there's something that you have that's a burning question we can't get to today, we definitely want to get that answer for you from the Division of Emergency Management's Bureau of Mitigation. So you all bear with me. This shouldn't take more than 30 minutes. And I ask that you hold your questions until the end. So that way we can get through the presentation and I may end up answering some of those questions as we go along. All right, so first of all, I don't know if you guys can see this screen or not. I know the light is a little bright there, but I will tell you the benefits and overview of Elevate Florida. We're going to cover those just so you all understand what mitigation really is all about. What we want to be able to do is help Florida homeowners to protect their homes against future. That's a little too dark. Yes, ma'am. To protect Florida homeowners against future damages. And so what that looks like is protecting you all, if that's fine with you guys. Perfect. So what we want to do is to be able to protect you all from future hurricanes, floods, and other catastrophic events. The purpose of this program is also to expedite that mitigation process, which typically in the past, if you all are not familiar, this is the first time that the state of Florida is providing a residential mitigation program under the Division of Emergency Management. Typically, this funding is going to go to counties and it's going to go to public works projects, elevating roads, water management, different things like that that the county would deem necessary for overall public benefit. However, through this program, it's going to go directly to those homeowners. So this is going to be the first time that Florida is providing this, and it's certainly going to be a benefit to those who move forward and ultimately qualify. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest parts is the cost savings. I don't know if anybody has had a chance to go and get estimates or has done some research into what it costs to lift a home, but it's quite expensive. And so through this program, you all are going to benefit from having a 75% cost share that the grant funding from this program is going to take care of. And then the homeowners will be responsible for 25%. Just so you all are aware, this program currently has allocated $400 million, and that's coming from two grant sources. One of them is hazard mitigation funds from FEMA, and the other one is Swift Current grant funding. So essentially, these are two federal funding sources that the Division of Emergency Management is reallocating for homeowners. But just be mindful, there is that cap, and some of you all might be doing the numbers in your head. Just to manage expectations, we do anticipate there being more of a demand for this program than there is funding for it, although the division will be working to do its best to make sure that those dollars are allocated appropriately and that we try to do as much as far as cost benefits as we can to get as many homeowners in the program as possible. One of the other great benefits is going to be lower insurance premiums. Most of the time, if you have insurance, you probably had your home, or maybe that house is maybe 30, 40, 50 years old when it was first built. It was that code. But as you see over the years, environment is changing and your insurance costs are probably changing as well. I'm sure they're going up. So that's because your house is probably out of code as far as the floodplain is known. So what this is going to do is going to lift your home for that elevation project, and it's going to make sure that you're above the actual base flood zone now, and it's going to put you in a position to lower your insurance premiums, which is one of the measures that we're hoping to seek for most homeowners in this program. You may also get some increased property value, but I think the biggest benefit from this program is going to be that comprehensive support. I don't know if anybody's ever had to run behind a general contractor or an inspector or a construction company. They kind of on their own timeline at point. So with this program, you actually have a comprehensive project management solution that the Division of Emergency Management is going to oversee. So what does that mean? The inspectors, the engineers, designers, GCs, elevation companies, all of those are going to be procured by the Division of Emergency Management. So that means none of you have to go out and try to figure this out on your own. DEM will be there holding your hand each step of the way to make sure that not only are you protected, but to also make sure that these programs are being handled appropriately and by the book. So those are the 4 major benefits, and we'll get a little bit more into some of these points a little bit more as we go through the presentation. When we cover eligibility, I'll go through this briefly. I know you all can. Number 1, got to be 18 years or older. You have to be a U.S. citizen. You have to agree and be willing to pay that 25% cost share. And just so you all are aware, there is a 2-prong cost share. The first cost share is for the mitigation, pre-mitigation agreement. That's going to be agreeing to have those different inspections and assessments done. That's going to help us to better understand, what condition your home is in, what condition the soil is in. That's going to give the engineers and folks a better understanding of what steps they need to take for that home and which program you actually qualify for the construction type. The other thing that you need to be mindful of is that you have to be the legal owner of that residential property. So if it's an LLC or something along those lines that owns that property, unfortunately, that is not going to be qualifiable for this program. We want to make sure that this is going to homeowners and not business investors. Not to say that we don't love business investors, just for the sake of this program, it's going to be for homeowners. So LLCs and corporations that own those properties are not going to be eligible. One of the other things to be mindful of is that there are a lot of different property types that are eligible through the program. That is single family homes, multifamily, duplexes, townhouses, semi-detached apartments, mobile and manufactured homes are eligible through Elevate Florida. One thing to be mindful of, though, when we talk about condos, townhomes, if there's an attached and shared ownership of that building, each of the residents, each of the homeowners is going to have to be willing to go through the process together. So if it's a triplex townhouse where there's 3 owners, each of those owners would have to agree and apply to the program and be willing to go through that elevation or whatever that construction type that you all ultimately decide. If one of those people says, no, I don't want to do this, unfortunately, that would be a disqualifying factor. So just something to be mindful of as you're entering the program and considering applying. So now we'll get into the actual construction types. I think this is probably the one that most people want to know the most about. What can I actually get done to my home through this program? So the first program that we're looking at doing for homes is going to be structural elevation. That is the physical raising of your home. As I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that by the current codes, and that'll be found out through the elevation certificate, what is the base floodplain for your house? And the program is going to put you at least 1 foot above that to make sure that you're at code moving forward and that you're safer from those future floods. Now, that is the main and ideal program type that we want you all to go through, that FEMA wants you to go through as a mitigation program. However, if we go out and they do the structural assessments and find that your home is not structurally sound to elevate, or for some of you that might have had severe and significant damage, maybe your home is no longer there, or maybe it's somewhat destroyed or demolished, obviously we're not going to elevate a home that's not safe for you all to inhabit. So that's going to push you into the mitigation reconstruction. And so essentially what that is going to be where they're going to completely build a new home. They're going to demolish whatever's on that property, and then they're going to build a new one that's up to code. And make sure that you have a safe, sanitary, and secure home to move into. Now, I will tell you, this is a little different when it comes down to the cost share. As I mentioned, the 75-25% split does change a little bit for mitigation and reconstruction. For a structural elevation, that split is not capped. So whatever it costs to elevate the home, that is what that 75% will cover. Under mitigation and reconstruction, the cap is $220,000. So Anything beyond that $220,000 of that cost share would be the homeowner's responsibility. So that's just something to be mindful of. Obviously, if you're going through the process and you find that you wanted to elevate your home, but you can't, and you have to do a mitigation reconstruction, and that's something that you're not interested in, you don't have to proceed with that program. But you know, that would be the ultimate choice you would have. We're not going to elevate a house that's not structurally sound or that's destroyed or something along those lines. So just be mindful of that. The other project type is acquisition demolition. This is going to be where the local municipality or county is going to maintain that lot. They're going to demolish the lot, and it would be maintained as an open space, maybe something like a park, dog park, whatever it is that they might see fit for that open space, but they can't build on it into the future. So that's something that DEM would have to work with your local municipality or county on to get their agreement that they're going to pay you the market rate value for that land in order for them to do this type of project type, and then you'd get that money, basically walk away into the sunset. But as I mentioned, there has to be collaboration there. So this is not a guaranteed project type that you could enter into. Then finally, wind mitigation. Those are just going to be measures to reduce your home from future wind risk. So hurricane windows, hurricane doors, hurricane shutters, also harnesses on the roof for things that are going to strengthen your roof from future vulnerabilities. So those are the 4 program types, project types. And if y'all have any questions about that later on, feel free to ask them once we get to the Q&A. So I gave you all some documents when you first came in. I'd like y'all to kind of reference this applicant checklist. If you've got that, it's going to help you so you don't have to try to squint your eyes at this projector screen. If you open it up to the second page, you're going to see information needed to apply. So if you want to follow this there, it'll be a lot easier for you than trying to squint at the screen. But essentially, these documents are what we're going to need for you to expedite your project, your application review process. That's going to include things like photos of the structures, insurance declaration page, elevation certificate, geotechnical report, flooding photos, insurance claim information, substantial damage declaration from your county, and then there may be some other ones in there as well that you all have reference to. What I will say though, if you don't have some of these documents, so if you're looking up here and you say, well, I don't have an elevation certificate, or I don't have a geotechnical report, which is essentially a soil study, that's okay. We're not asking you to go run out and try to do this before you apply to the program. All of the assessments and inspections that you do not have will be part of your application process. So as we mentioned earlier, that 25% cost share for the first piece, if you don't have any of these inspections, or if you have them and they're not up to date, we will work on this on your behalf. So instead of going out and trying to do that on your own, that'll be part of the cost savings that you can benefit from with that 25-75% split. So we ask you to submit all that you have available at this time, get all the documents that you do have that are on this list, and then your case manager is going to work with you to determine which ones are going to be necessary. If you have some of them already, are they up to date enough for like the elevation certificate? If that's a little bit too old, it might not qualify. But if you got it done more recently, maybe the last 3 to 6 months, it could quite likely be something that's eligible as a part of your application. Go on to the next slide. Thank you. So this is the one that's going to be the most important when we talk about the timeline and process. And so you all received a document earlier. It looks like this. It's a one page front and back. If you flip it over to the back, you're going to see something that says project timeline. And that's what I want you all to focus your attention on, because this is the point where we are telling you all this is a process, and some patience is going to be needed throughout this process. The stage 1 is going to be the easiest. Application submission, all the documents we just discussed, you guys are going to go home, identify as many of those documents as you can, compile them, get your application set up, and submit them into the portal. Once you've done that, that's going to trigger stage 2. It's going to be your application review process. So you will then be assigned a case manager, and you'll know who your case manager is because you're going to receive an email. They'll reach out to you and introduce themselves, let you know what their name is. They're going to let you know how to get in touch with them. I do know there was a gentleman in here earlier who mentioned he had a case manager. He was trying to get some information on that. So if any of you all have those questions, we're happy to speak to that once the presentation is over. But ultimately, you'll have that case manager that's going to be with you each step of the way, helping you to understand what you need for your application and what steps are going to follow in each stage of this program. The next step in this application review, as I mentioned, if you don't have these inspections, the first thing that you're going to have to do is sign a pre-agreement agreement, and that's going to be you agreeing to pay the first cost share. Once you sign that cost share, that is you agreeing that, hey, I want to participate in this program. I'm going to pay the 25%. You will have to pay that 25% before those inspections take place. And that's essentially now making you a program participant, right? You are now a program participant. You paid that money. We're going to send those inspectors out. Your case manager will work with you at that time to make sure that you know when that inspector is coming out, make sure that they can plan something according to your schedule. I want to let you all know nobody's coming out to your house with Elevate Florida right now, knocking on your door saying, let me come in and inspect your home. Okay. If you have that happen, please know that there are people out here that are trying to do scams, that are trying to get ahead of this program and lock folks into things that quite honestly are not above board. So if that happens to you, please call us, contact us at the number on your documents, because we want to know about those folks that are showing that bad behavior, because at this point we have not procured any of the inspectors, GCs, elevation companies. Not to say that there are not companies that can do this, that are out there that might be in conversation with you or in your community, but they have not yet been procured and contracted with DEM. So just be mindful of that. One of the things I will tell you as well with the pre-mitigation agreement, once you lock into those inspections and you get everything scheduled and they start to do those inspections, if you were to get beyond that, which is going to be stage 3, and you say, hey, I don't know if I want to do this program anymore. It's taking too long. I just want to sell my house. I want to just kind of get over this. That's completely fine. But if you withdraw from this program, there will be some consequences associated with it. Obviously, the cost share is for program participants. So if you withdraw, you're no longer a program participant. So you would be responsible to cover the other 75% of the inspection costs. That does not mean you have to pay for construction costs or elevation costs, because you haven't reached that point yet. But we just want you all to be mindful that participation is dependent on you staying in the program. So there are some financial consequences if you withdraw. Stage 3, that's going to be the decision and approval stage. Ultimately, what we're doing on your behalf is packaging these applications to send them to FEMA for final review. So as I mentioned before, this is a FEMA mitigation program, so FEMA has to make the final determination. However, again, this is a comprehensive program. We'll have application preparers that are going to be getting all the information that we've been going over, putting that in a presentation, in a package for your particular application. And they're really going to make sure that it's pretty much to FEMA standards, so we don't have to worry about anything getting kicked back, and you don't have to worry about trying to do this on your own. Once it goes to FEMA, if awarded, you'll receive an estimated cost share. So if FEMA declares that your application is eligible to move forward, you will be awarded and notified about that. You're also going to be awarded and given an estimate of what that cost share for the construction is going to be. I know there might be some folks that are curious, well, how much is it going to cost to elevate the home? How much is it going to cost to build a new home? At this point, I can't give you those specifics because we have not procured those contractors yet. And a lot of this is going to be dependent on what prices they provide, what their proposals look like. But we will make sure that, we're trying to get the best price for the applicants that are part of this program. But we're a little too early in the process right now for me to give specifics on that. If you're interested in trying to figure out what that might look like, you can maybe look outside of the program at this time. But as you are a participant, you will be notified of all these costs before you have to sign anything. But that next step would be signing a construction contract, and you would have to pay that other 25% cost share. Next stage is stage 4. You have to vacate that property. So once we move into construction phase, you might have seen videos of people living in houses while they're under construction, falling out of the window. We're not going to let that happen, okay? We're going to make sure that you guys are protected and that you're out of that house. So you will have to vacate the property. You can either move in with a family friend or someone that you might be familiar with during that time. It'd probably be a more feasible option. But if you would like to go for a short-term rental, hotel, or something along those lines, the choice is ultimately yours. But there will be, some costs associated with that for you all, but it will be tied in to your overall cost share. So that way you don't have to pay the full price, but it will not be fully covered by the division if you choose that option. And then finally, once your construction is over, that takes about 3 to 9 months, depending on what type of project type you're doing. Obviously, elevating the home is going to be quicker than building a new home from scratch. So can't really tell you right now until we know what type of project type you're working with, what your timeline looks like. But I would always say lean further on the long end of these times. Don't get to 3 months and get stir crazy. And the same thing with stage 2. Don't get at the first month and figure out, hey, I haven't heard anything, what's going on. You're still well within the window. And for anybody that has applied, raise some hands for people that have already applied. Okay. So for you folks, there is nobody further than stage 2 in this program right now. So nobody's getting their houses elevated right now. Nobody's doing construction at this time. Everybody is in the application review phase. That is as far as we've gone, because we still have to procure the vendors for these other projects. So finally, it's going to be your closeout. You'll be able to relocate into your home. One of the things to be mindful of is that you will have to acquire an NFIP flood insurance policy, and that has to stay on the home for the duration of the home, for the lifetime of the home. This isn't something you can do for 5 years and get rid of it. There will be some consequences if you do decide to try to get around having a flood insurance plan through NFIP. And it's kind of one of those things where you can break rules, but it's not a good idea to do so. So we are telling you that it is a requirement, and it will be a requirement by FEMA. So that's just something that you'd have to be okay with in order to move forward. And then you also get a closeout summary and a checklist of everything that's been done to that house when you move back in. We talked earlier about the cost share. These are some opportunities where your cost share may be reduced. Repetitive loss properties means that you are a NFIP policyholder and that your structure has been insured by an NFIP policy or a plan. And if you had at least 2 paid flood losses, more than $1,000 in the last 10 years or in a 10-year period of time, as of 1978, you are going to be eligible for a reduced cost share, meaning that you would not have to pay that full 25%. However, this does not mean that your house was flooded 2 or 3 times in the last years and you did not file a claim, or you did not carry insurance, but you had flood damage, right? You have to have an NFIP policy, and it has to be on record that you had these claims and they were over $1,000 each in order to qualify for this. Same thing for repetitive loss property. That's going to be 4 or more separate claim payments that have been made under that standard insurance policy exceeding $5,000, and with a cumulative amount of payments exceeding $20,000. And so there's also a part there where you have at least 2 separate claim payments that have been made under a standard insurance policy with a cumulative amount of such payments exceeding the fair market value of the insured building on the day before each loss. So those are some ways that you might be able to get a reduced cost share for severe repetitive loss. It might even be a complete cost share, right? It might even get up to as far as 100% that you would have covered through the program. But as I mentioned, you would have to qualify and show proof of this in order for that to be something that you take advantage of. All right. This is just a little bit more information about the cost share. I covered most of this already, but as I mentioned, you got to sign that number 1 pre-mitigation agreement. You have to pay that 25% for your inspection costs. You will get an estimate, number 2, of the construction costs for your property. So as I mentioned, nobody's going to sign a blank check. We're not looking to try to dupe anybody. By the time you get to that point in the process, you will be made aware of how much those costs are going to be. And then you'll decide, you, your family, your household, whether or not this program is going to work for you and if you have the financial means to move forward. Number 3, once you sign that construction contract, you'll have to pay that 25% cost share. And then there also, as I mentioned, will be some relocation expenses that are part of your cost share as well. So if you want to move and go into a short-term rental, you can, but that's going to be more money out of your pocket to do so. These are some ways that you can cover the cost share. Obviously, personal money, your own funds, personal savings is a way. If you have money in the bank, obviously you can tap into that for the cost share. Some people may not have that much income available, or maybe they want to choose a loan as opposed to tapping into their personal savings. This could be an equity pull from your home. It could be a personal lender that you go to your local credit union or financial institution that you bank with. Whatever your decision is, we don't want to make that decision for you. I'm not a financial advisor, so this is not to tell you how to go about doing it. We're just giving you some ideas on options that are available. Also, SBA loans, if it's available and you're eligible for it, you would have probably known. You might have engaged with the SBA after the storm. They do disaster loans, disaster recovery loans. So if you had a chance to go to the DRCs after the hurricanes hit this last year, you might have seen SBA representatives and be in conversation with them about what that loan might look like. They do provide 30-year disaster loans where they provide funding for homeowners to strengthen and harden their houses. So this is a potential option. If you are eligible, you would have probably known about it. And if you think you could be eligible, I'd recommend reaching out to the SBA to learn more about that opportunity. For folks that might not have the funding, you can always go to volunteer organizations, nonprofits, check in your philanthropic network. They might have some funding for you. And I would say check in with your local community to find out if that's something that's available through the program. And finally, NFIP policyholders might be eligible for tapping into increased cost of compliance. So if you have an NFIP policy, you can always follow up with your insurance representative to find out, hey, I'm interested in participating in Elevate Florida. I heard about the increased cost of compliance. How does this work and can I benefit? They would be able to let you know that. I would not be able to tell you specifically whether or not you're eligible for that program, but they would definitely be able to give you some more insight on it. All right, so here we are at the end. Key takeaways from the program. Comprehensive project management, I think, is one of the things that makes people most excited about this project. You don't have to do any of this on your own, right? Every step of the way, you're going to have a case manager. DEM is going to be working on your behalf, and this is going to come at no additional cost. So you're not going to have to hire a project management team to make sure all of your projects are going the right way. DEM is going to take care of that to make sure that they're being done right and on time. Also, throughout the construction phase, your property is going to be visited to ensure that it's in compliance and that it's on the right timeline. So that way you don't have to worry about whether or not the construction company is doing what they need to be doing, whether they're following the timeline or if they're, moving above board. We'll have folks that are going out to do those site visits on your behalf to make sure that everything gets done in a timely and appropriate manner. And then finally, this is on your documents that I provided too, but if you'd like to get in contact with the program, we do have a contact us portal. The toll-free number in front of you is open Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then the info@elevatefl.org is a information email that you can send any of your inquiries to, and someone will follow up with you with those answers to any program questions you may have. So at this point, we're done with the formal presentation, but I will move to the next slide and open it up for Q&A. And so if we could maybe turn the lights on so that way we can get everybody. There we go. I know we had some nodders in here. Yeah, he knows. Yes, ma'am.
Two questions.
Yes, ma'am.
One is, you said you couldn't tell us how much it would cost, but can you give us, I'm sure being in this project, do you have a range or any general idea? Is it like hundreds of thousands or?
So what I can tell you from as far as elevation is concerned, you're looking at a six-figure cost. I can't tell you as high as that goes, and I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. I've heard of estimates. I've heard people say what private vendors have quoted them at, but that's not to say that would be for this program. So I wouldn't even want to be on record to say it could be this much because it could either be higher or lower. But what we will be doing is making sure that any of the elevation companies that are participating or wanting to participate, they will have to submit a bid, a proposal that has previous qualifications that talks about different jobs that they've done. They're also going to be able to have proof that they have done this successfully. And we will be putting the bid out publicly. So we're going to be advocating that some of these bigger companies that do this, many of which may be outside of the state of Florida. Some of them are starting to find their way into Florida. I won't mention any of the names because I don't want to put names in your head, but you can do your own research. We will be opening that bid process for them. So we encourage all of them to come in, and then it's a competitive process, right? They'll submit their bids. They'll tell us how much they think they can do it for. DEM is going to make the decisions on which companies are selected, and more or less it's going to probably be, a straightforward cost across the board. I can't imagine some companies being able to do it for, astronomically higher cost than others if they're participating in the program.
Okay, my second question is, if we have not owned our house for a year, and it was flooded before and had claims made on it, does that count for that part of what you said? Yeah, like for more.
Yes, ma'am. For the repetitive loss.
Yeah.
So if you're able to identify that there were previous NFIP claims on that home, which it's a program under FEMA. So my understanding is that FEMA gives an annual report to kind of give you an idea of how many times the home has been impacted by flooding. There was a claim. So I would say reach out to your policy and find that out. It would have had to have been an actual claim. Yes, ma'am. It would have had to have been a filed claim. Well, NFIP is a FEMA sponsored insurance program. Yes, ma'am. It's a FEMA more or less sponsors that type of program, that type of insurance program. But you can find out, and they'd be able to let you know if there were previous instances. But it's not just if your house was flooded. Period. Did they submit the claim? Was it over the threshold? All those are important factors. Yes, ma'am.
Many of the homeowners here, this may be a second home. It's in their name,
Mm-hmm.
but it may be a second home. Is that covered under this program?
Yes, sir. So you can have a second home. Mm-hmm.
It's okay.
Yes, sir. It's not only for primary residence. It can be a second home. So if you have 2 homes in your name or 3 homes in your name, you could submit for that other one. As long as it's not an LLC or a corporation, you can apply for it.
Does it have to be within Florida? 2 homes? You have a home in Connecticut, a home in Florida?
Oh, where you have your home doesn't matter. Obviously, you'd have to apply. You'd have to apply for the home in Florida for this program. Yes, sir.
You're about to move, you're in the transition of making this your one and only home.
Not relevant. No.
Sell.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, the only time where if you have multiple homes, let's say you have 2 or 3 homes, the only time where that might be a factor is if with the scoring process, right? As I mentioned to you all, there's going to be more of a demand for this program than there will be funding. So there's going to be a scoring card that's going to be created. It hasn't been released yet, but I anticipate that there may be some higher scores for people that's their single primary home versus someone that's applying for their 3rd home that they don't live in, right? So that might come into play, but it does not make you a disqualifier. Yes, ma'am.
I've already applied, and my case manager has said to make sure to not do anything in the interior to start to put my house back together. And I'm just, if you can elaborate on that, is that correct?
So what is it? Can you give some
Well, my house
insight?
flooded
Okay.
in the flood, and my case manager said, don't start to do don't hire a contractor to put stuff back together.
Okay. So it's not a disqualifying factor, but it's something that we might advise against, because if you want your home to be elevated and they come in and say it's not structurally sound or what have you, it's something that happens when they come in and do those assessments and you find that your home can't be elevated, you might be in a situation where now you've gone and done things to the house and it's not eligible for the program. So I think it's probably more on the safe side.
If it does qualify, does the cost sharing apply to the interior?
No, ma'am. The cost share is only for elevation. So it's not going to do any type of cosmetic.
My case manager told me something incorrect.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to have a conversation with you afterwards. But yeah, no, the program is for the elevation. So if you apply for structural elevation, that's what the program is going to do. It's not going to fix the insides of the home and fix your drywall and things like that. That's not qualified under the program. What's your question?
It qualifies for outside raising the house.
Yes, sir.
It won't qualify for drywall, things like that.
Right.
New electric, pipes, they have to be, the water pipes would have to be raised, et cetera. Would that be covered under that?
So utilities will be connected and qualified under it, but it's not going to be anything where we're going inside your home and fixing all of that. So like if we elevate your home, obviously things have to be disconnected in order for that elevation to occur.
Paid for the pipes up top, for the electric to be brought up.
No, it's really going to be more so to make sure it's connected afterwards. So not anything that you need to fix yourself.
Stairs and decks.
Stairs, yes. Patios, decks, things like that are not likely to be covered. So we will make sure that it has stairs. And if you have someone in the household that's disabled and you have a note that says that they are actually disabled, you may even qualify for a lift in the home.
What if you're not currently disabled, but you probably will be?
I understand. I understand. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So as I know the program to be right now, you would have to have actual medical letter to state that you have that issue. So I don't believe it's going to be looking into the future, into perpetuity about that lift. But, you know, that's how it is right now. That's how it's set up. So if you didn't have anyone.
Know that, I mean, and with a lot of people here, my age or older,
I understand.
to elevate something going into your 70s and 80s and not have them.
Well, I can only go by what the program guidelines say at this time. Yes, ma'am. As it's currently stated, you would have to have some type of medical determination that you have a disability in order to get that, as it is currently set up. Give me one moment, sir. I'm going to get the question here in the back, and then we'll move over.
Question. You mentioned townhomes and apartments. So apartments are owned by one owner, right? And they're out of state. They don't reside here. How do you go about that? And can that owner let
The apartments are in the homeowner's name.
know
S-
individually owned? There's one owner out of California.
Right. Is it a individual or is it a business that owns those apartments?
So it's business.
Yes, ma'am. That would not qualify. Only it has to be individual owners.
Under a name. I know that the name qualifies, but they don't reside here. They live in California. They're under property management.
So it sounds like if the property is owned by a company, LLC, some type of business entity, it's not going to qualify. No, ma'am.
But if it's under my name and I own that building, then I apply.
So what I'd like to take that one offline. My understanding as it stands, right? It sounds like the scenario that you're asking about is someone who has a business that owns an apartment. If the business owns the apartment, it does not qualify. It is a person that has to own that building. Can't be a business.
Then I have another one that are townhomes that are individually owned
Mhm.
owners,
Yes, ma'am.
right? And they all have to be in compliance with the same, they all have to apply.
They all have to apply. They all have to agree.
1 out of the 10,
No, ma'am.
they all 10 have.
All 10. Yes, ma'am. They all have to be in agreement. There can't be one person that says, no, I won't sign this, and it move forward.
So how does that work with the 2575?
They would still pay it would be for the individual home, they would still pay their singular cost share. So it would, probably when you work the math out, I would imagine it would break down to be the same cost, but they would all have to be on the same page. You can't have 8 people say we want to do it. It's not a majority rules thing.
Do you have any type of guesstimation, knowing that you have no contract signed with construction companies? There's gonna be a lot of people, not just us alone here is a bunch of people.
Yes, sir.
When they possibly could start doing any, is it we're talking about a year from now, guesstimation?
So as I mentioned on the timeline, as far as we have the project timeline at this point, we're still in stage 2. And stage 2 is 1 to 4 months. So they're hoping to get through stage 2 within the next 4 months, well, maybe 3 months now, because the program has been open for a month. And then you've got 2 to 3 months for the determination phase with FEMA. Has to go up to FEMA. They have to take the time to review the documentation and give their determination. So you're not looking at something that's going to be this isn't happening in the next 2 months.
You think that more or less you could start in this area in a year or so, or just a guesstimation?
I think guesstimations are potentially damaging. I would say what I would recommend is following the release timelines that have been provided. That's as far as I'd be willing to go, especially since I'm not a construction engineer. Yes, sir.
She has had hers up, but I do have a question after her.
Yes, ma'am.
The flood insurance certificate is for like 3 years. So after that, let's say your house is paid off, and the flood insurance increases to 10 times the price that it was. But you say we have to have flood insurance for the duration of the ownership of the home. How are you going to regulate that if somebody decides that they can't afford the flood insurance, but they want to stay in their house?
That's a really good question. It's a little bit further out advanced of the program. I think at that point you probably have to try to figure out some type of process with NFIP. The goal is to get your insurance premiums lower, not increase them. I can't really speak to 5 to 10 years from now what our climate looks like, what the floodplains look like. If I could, I'd be a rich man.
But the insurance costs are,
Yeah.
forcing people out of their homes already.
I understand.
We went without insurance and then got hit with a flood with a 115-year-old house that had never flooded. this
Wow.
last year. So
I'm sorry to hear
missed
that.
it and we got burned.
Yeah. Well, and I know if we sat down here and thought about a lot of hypotheticals, I'm sure we could be here. And not to say that they're not relevant, but we'd be here all day. What I can say is that the reason you have to maintain that flood insurance is because it's a FEMA guideline. So if FEMA's going to make the investment to mitigate your home, they want to make sure that that home is protected into the future and that they're not making, $100,000 plus, multi-$100,000 plus investment to then you not have insurance and something happens and there's no type of coverage there. So that's just something that they do make the homeowner have to do. Is something that's enforced as a
I would want to do it as long
compliance.
as it doesn't skyrocket.
I understand.
It's just scary.
Yeah, I understand. But what I would say, at least in the short term, you should anticipate your insurance premiums going down and not escalating. And I don't know if your home is elevated 10 or 15 feet and then you're, back into that, that's, you might want to consider the future of that location. But I'm not a realtor either, so I'll stay away from that one. Yes, ma'am.
My next one's a general question.
Okay.
And I know that you don't know everything about lifting houses up, but I heard that you could lift, or somebody said they saw it, and you had mentioned don't get things done to your house. Well, we've already gotten a lot of things done to ours, and we have already had it inspected as being very structurally stable.
Okay.
So my question is, we want to get it so we can move and live in it, so we are fixing it up. But I was told that they can lift these houses up, and somebody used the example, a cup doesn't even shell.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, have you heard anything?
They took my example. That's the example I was going to use. So I've been told, and you're right, I'm not a structural engineer or a lifter, but if you go to YouTube, there's some really amazing videos that you all can find where you can see the process. And so essentially you're talking about very sophisticated hydraulic systems that are going to, number one, they're going to put beams, very strong metal beams under the foundation of your home, and they are going to put it on that hydraulic system, and it's going to lift it evenly across the way. I've been told that a glass of water, can sit there and not move, which when you think about it, it's kind of the only safe way to do that, because if they were doing it correct, it probably wouldn't be a good project type to go after. But it's very, very secure. Yes, ma'am. And as far as the work that you've done, don't consider that to be a disqualifying factor. You are still very likely to be eligible for the program.
It's going to happen again.
Yeah.
So.
Understood. Yeah. Yes, sir.
What about building height restrictions? How does this come into play?
So DEM will be working with your local counties, with the local government around those. I think we were in Pinellas County last week, and they mentioned something around height restrictions. So that's something that the division will have to kind of work out on a case-by-case basis with the county. And we have been working very closely with the counties to roll this program out, keep them informed, and we'll have to work with them on codes and zoning and things like that as well. So I can't give you an exact answer right now because we don't have any examples of it or how we'll deal with it, but I do know that the goal is to try to make sure that the county is in collaboration with us around some of those particular circumstances. So I would say stay tuned. And if you are considering applying, don't let any of these unanswered questions stop you from getting in the queue. Because if you can always withdraw before you sign anything, and you'll be fine. So when you get to that first required pre-mitigation agreement, if you don't want to move forward, you don't have to, and there's no consequence. There's no cost consequence because you haven't signed anything. But then it allows you to get more information as the program is being developed and built out. So time is going to be very helpful in this program. Yes, ma'am. I'll go with you next.
I
And then
just
you.
wanted to ask you what you were saying about, because I had written down, if you make that initial investment
Mhm.
that was in stage 2, I think, and what if you get to stage 3 and they say, oh, it really can't be done? You're still in, I mean, you still incurred that cost and you cannot get that cost back, correct?
So if you get to the stage where they do the structural integrity assessment and they find that they can't lift the house, what that's going to then trigger is the recommendation that you do a mitigation reconstruction. And so then you'll have the decision to say, hey, okay, I like to move forward with mitigation reconstruction. And then you'd have to obviously agree with whatever terms come with building a new construction home, a new constructed home. If you don't want to move forward at that point, you just say, hey, I'll figure this out on my own, you would have to pay the rest of those costs. Anything that the inspectors have done would have to be paid
Well,
for.
at that point, you're only going to get 220,000 possibly, and it's going to cost way more than that to reconstruct.
Yes, ma'am. And that's why I would say, while this is going to be a great program for some folks, it may not make sense for everybody.
You don't know if it's going to qualify.
You don't know at this on this very day. You don't know, but as you go through the process, there is some aspect of finding out through those assessments. Yes, ma'am. I mean, I couldn't tell you for sure that it would qualify, that it would be structurally sound. So yes, that's something that you would have to be in the understanding of, that you might get an integrity assessment and they say it's not eligible to lift. But unless you, I mean, I don't know. I can't speak on your property, so I wouldn't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. But that is the consequence of withdrawing. But I would say I won't necessarily look at these costs as a, money thrown out of the window. If you're going to lift your home, if you're going to do anything to your home, more construction, a lot of these assessments are going to be required, especially if you're looking at lifting it or looking at doing something else. They're going to need to have some of these assessments and inspections. So look at it as more of an investment maybe on the front end. And I can't speak to the cost of those inspections, but it's not going to be nearly as much for an inspection as it would for construction costs. So, but you'll get more insight on that, and you can make the decision before you sign as to whether or not you feel comfortable moving forward and locking yourself into the program.
Just on possible problems people might run into, and I think a lot of these might have been ironed out. I certainly hope so, but I'm still subject. I've been in contact with Florida disaster people here on Little County government there, and was tipped off, and as soon as that came out, I applied. Currently, I cannot use that portal where you're supposed to up. So I have a bunch of things that I cannot, and I cannot reach my case manager. And if I call that number 877-353-8835, they ask for your case number. I refer them to my case number. It goes to case manager, and it's like it's dead.
Yes, sir.
They even send me emails saying there has been a change to your application. I'm going, oh, what would that be? They say, go to the portal. Well, I go to the portal, I can't get in. So, and I just recently received an email stating now this is, the only time I reached my case manager after they said he had been assigned to me was when I caught him accidentally. When I was able to call that number, he was manning the phone. He says, oh, I said, would you happen to be, and he was my case manager. That's the only way I was ever able to get a hold of him. He sent me an email, told me things to send only to this address, and I sent the exact things that he listed. But things that were listed on this information that'll be helpful in your process, I had all that started gathering it as well, in addition to the items he's listed, and tried to upload them. I cannot get into the portal to upload anything.
Yes, sir.
And as a result, now they're stating that he says my application has been, that's from him, I can't reply back, and he won't answer anyway. He says that your application has now been submitted for review. And I'm thinking, well, they have very incomplete information. In fact, I can't even see my original application. There's no way, it's like I'm in the portal, I'm just out there knocking on the door and I can't see anything or make any progress. So it's bizarre. It's like I'm shut out.
Yes, sir.
And I know you said you would look into that.
I will, and I can't do that right now, which is when we spoke earlier. What we'd love to do.
I do know there could be some, but I'm thinking maybe mine's because but here it's still going on. I cannot upload or do anything through the portal. I cannot reach my case manager, and yet I get emails from them saying this now. Oh, there's a change into your thing. I'm going, well, what would that be? And they say go to here and there and find out what it is. I can't go. I can go there.
Yes,
but
sir.
I can't get in.
Yes, sir.
Can't even find out what they tell me to go.
Yes, sir. And you know, I can understand that can be a frustrating process, which is when we spoke earlier, we would love to take a seat with you and look into that to see what's going on. I can't tell you that from this podium, but once we get down and look into your application, I'd be able to give you some more insight. What I will tell you is that when you upload your documents into the portal, you can no longer upload documents through the portal. That is just the way that the process is. It's the way they created the application. So you can't go back into the portal and upload documents. You have to send them to your case manager. Give me a moment. So you have to send those to your case manager, and then from there, I understand. So as I mentioned, I'm just giving a understanding of the process, and we would love to have a conversation with you since you have a very unique situation and probably one that you'd rather discuss in private and not necessarily in front of everyone. Yes, sir. Okay.
Because construction prices are so variable with conditions now, like is there, let's say you get a contractor and he gives you a price, then if the prices go up, let's say the price of steel goes up, the price of wood goes up after you've already signed the contract, then the whole price would just go up and your 25% would go up and the 75% would go up. Do you understand?
I understand what you're saying, and as again, I understand and appreciate some of those proactive thoughts. However, I can't really speak to price inflation and what that might look like. What we're going to do from the Division of Emergency Management perspective is make sure that the costs are as fair as they can be, and that the contractors are sticking as close as they can to the price estimates that they provide. And so it's not like you'll just be looking at estimates that keep coming in by yourself. DEM is going to be doing that for you. So when you think about the #1 Division of Emergency Management across the United States, which we are, that's going to be who you have as your ally in this process and not just you by yourself. So, but I can't speak into future inflation costs or future costs of materials and things of that nature. But I like to believe that economy of scale is going to be at your benefit. You know, there's going to be a lot of construction. There's going to be companies that are doing this for more than one person in a grouping that's being monitored by the government. So I don't anticipate it being, you know, a situation where you're paying more than market value for something in this program. But time will tell, and, you know, those price estimates will be revealed once the construction companies are procured. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
The question, okay, after you submit your application, and the second part is you're approved, so your paperwork is already done.
Yes, sir.
Now you go into the third part where they go into a review of your applications to see if you qualify or not. Now, if you qualify for that, then they begin to send out an engineer or a geological surveyor or whatever they do, that part of the, to see if your ground or your property is eligible to be elevated.
So the studies, the geotechnical soil study, structural integrity inspections, those are going to take place during your application review phase. So before that gets sent off to FEMA, stage 3 is the determination. So before it goes to FEMA, during that 1 to 4 month phase is how it's currently been timed out. That's when you would expect to have inspectors and the inspections and assessments take place.
Now, that part there is these people are I don't go on after that, that 25% is, well, I got those reports, obviously.
Yeah, you get to keep all of that. So it's not like they're gonna take them from you if you decide to withdraw from the program. They will be yours.
So I'll be at that point now where now I have 25 invested in to see whether or not, or what I have to do to raise that house.
Yes, sir.
And after that, if that's okay,
Mhm.
and they say, yeah, you're good, you can raise your house, and I know it's 12 feet 1 inch or something like that. Up to 18, I'm not sure about that part. But, yeah, now you can raise your house up and stuff like that, and then after that, you just wait, that's it, until they tell you to get out, because they're gonna come in and start doing this whole thing.
Yes, sir. So you'll have communication for those different phases. So once we get to the phase where all the different inspectors and services that need to be done for assessments are procured, you'll be notified. Your case manager will likely be the one that's reaching out to you to let them move into to the phase of them needing to get those inspections completed. And then they'll work with you to identify a time that's going to make sense for you, where you can come out and be at the home, so they can come and schedule that stuff. And then once they get all the assessments that may not be a part of your original documentation that you submitted, and they have everything that they need to have a completed application, that's where they will package that, prepare that on your behalf, and get ready to send it up to FEMA in groupings. So there'll be groupings of applications that will be sent to FEMA. Yes, sir. And that's not anything that you have to worry about. So yes, you'll get to sit back and just be patient and wait for someone to follow up with you and let you know where the status is. You won't have to do any of the heavy lifting on your own. Yes, sir.
As far as that email with your case manager, whoever she is, I have the woman. That's the only way I can reach. I email her directly, and she eventually, within a day or two, will get back to me.
Yes, sir. Well, sir, we understand, and we're gonna get to the bottom of that. Trust me, I've been able to get to the bottom of it before. But what I would say is, a lot of people, I know us as humans, we get a little stir crazy. If your application is already submitted and you've already sent in every document that you need to send, your case manager is likely working on other cases for people that are submitting new applications, right? If your documentation has already been uploaded and there's nothing else for them to get from you at this time, as I mentioned, there are no inspections going on, there are no assessments happening, so your application is in a holding period, and that's likely what's going on with you, sir. But we, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I'm not through uploading stuff.
Yes, sir.
It's requested here on this information here. I've got it, can't send it.
Yes, sir. We'll work with you at the end to make sure. Yes, sir. We'll work with you once the Q&A is over. Are there any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So, I work in the building department here, and so we're getting ready to, I know the county is getting ready to mail out letters for, this is your final date to submit for your permits, things of that nature. The city is also going to be sending out letters. Is FDEM sending out emails to these applicants that have applied as they go through the stage that they can submit to the building department, so the building department is aware that they're going through that process? In other words, they're going to receive a letter that says, hey, we haven't seen a permit come through, what are your plans? You have 2 weeks to get us, tell us what's happening before we proceed and move forward. What is it that we can expect in our department from FDEM for an applicant that's applied for the program?
I think that's a great question. I can definitely look a little bit more into that to figure out if they have some type of formalized letter. I think at this point in time, most of the correspondence and communication is with the applicant. So if an applicant is going through the process and they know that they have to respond to the county or to their local city, at this point, the onus is kind of on them to let them know. But there may be some plans, and if there aren't, I think that's a great recommendation for there to maybe be some type of formal letter. So I could certainly take that recommendation to the Bureau of Mitigation.
Municipalities, because you mentioned earlier counties,
Mhm.
but we don't always get the county information. So I think communicating with the municipalities
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, we're not entitled, we're going by someone, but yet this process can be anywhere up to, what, 19 months?
Mhm.
So it's almost a 2-year process from the timeline.
Right.
So that house could be sitting there for 2 years with no movement, and we're thinking that we're going through this program because that's what they said they were gonna do at first, and it's
Right.
just not feasible for them, and they dropped out in, at stage 3, they dropped out. How are we gonna know, so if you can send that information back, because the municipality needs to know that.
Yes, ma'am. I think that's a great point. And one of the purposes of these open office hours and community workshops is getting information like that so that we can take that back to the Bureau of Mitigation and make recommendations. And we've been able to do that on some other instances where we're going through and getting questions answered from these sessions to help us in the future. So I would love to have that conversation with you as well afterward to figure out how we can get a formal notice up to FEM.
Okay, and one more question is, when it's under construction, are they allowed to live in an RV on their property? If and when they're under construction, to alleviate some of that cost of them having to go somewhere else?
So I believe that'll probably be on a case by case basis, just depending on the construction zone. I mean, I would assume that there's going to be a construction hazard zone for any of these projects, and so some people might have more land than others. Some people might be on a small parcel. So I would feel comfortable. Absolutely. But I think the ultimate goal of the program is to make sure that people can have a feasible way to, live in the time that their home is being reconstructed. And that question has come up before. But I think it would be more on a case by case basis to make sure that if they are on the property, that it's safe for them to be on the property and that it's not impeding in that construction hazard zone. But if, someone does have that as their situation, they're living in an RV, I think just keeping that case manager abreast, keeping us abreast of what their circumstances are, particularly when you get to that point of construction getting started and you have to determine, hey, what are my options? Where am I going to go? That would be a great time. And maybe even in advance of that to figure out, hey, will I be able to stay in my RV? Is it going to be safe? Safety is going to be the key to answer that question.
Just keep in mind that a lot of municipalities, including us here, adopted new ordinances. So that's something that you may not see if you go into the code right away, right? So when you're doing that cost sharing for the freeboard and for building heights and things of that nature, just keep in mind that things are constantly being updated. So just to have that communication back with the cities and the counties to see where they're at, because it may not be what you're reading.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. And then once we wrap everything up, if I could sit down and we can type up a very thoughtful submission that I can get to the Bureau leadership, that'd be great. Yes, ma'am.
This be addressed also, my question going back to that dropping out at stage 3, and let's say you're not approved for the elevation, and you can't afford to tear it down and rebuild, even with $220,000 from the program, and you decide, okay, I'm gonna go back now to the drawing board, and I'm just gonna hire a contractor and put my house back together and hope for the best. Now I have to pay a penalty because I've waited close to a year. Now I'm paying full permitting fees at that point. How is that addressed in all of this?
When you say full permitting fees, are you talking about something related to the city or are you referring to the inspection?
Yeah, for my municipality, I'm gonna now, because I've gone way past this, what she's talking about, sending out letters that.
Got you.
okay,
So you mean like delays of incurring, costs of incurring?
Permit costs
Uh-huh.
for homeowners for an X amount of time.
Right.
To allow them to go through that process.
Yes, ma'am.
What she's stating is, if she gets to stage 3 and it's at 3 months, and let's say it prolongs and goes 5 months, and she's past the time that the city has allowed that waived permit fee.
Right.
Is that something, I think that's more municipality to municipality and county to county.
Yes.
I don't think that's something we can
Yeah, that would probably be on a more unique case by case basis, and how much the local cities or counties are willing to work with the program and understanding what we're trying to accomplish. I'm certainly not in a position to speak on it now, but I think as I'm having the conversation about that engagement with the local cities and municipalities and getting something to DM, we could.
But if you get to that point in stage 3, you've already incurred the pre-mitigation cost.
Yes, ma'am.
You're told, oh, your only option is to tear it down and build something, an elevated structure, which you can't afford to do, then you're going back to your municipality and incurring additional costs because you've gone through this whole process.
So it's, that is a hypothetical scenario that I don't think we can answer at this time. I would hope that the collaboration between FDEM and the local cities and counties can mitigate some of that potential delayed costs, to know that this person was intentionally working on going through the program. I can't speak to that, but I think that would be something that could be a conversation to be had on how can homeowners, not have to pay additional costs because they were hoping to participate in the program, ultimately could not. But that's something that we'd have to kind of look a little bit more deeper into. I couldn't provide you with an answer on that now. But as I mentioned, we're happy to get your ideas and thoughts and formulate that to send it up, because it could be something that's later addressed. But it would have to likely be on a city-by-city basis. And I don't think the state is in a position to enforce the city to waive costs or anything like that. So we just have to kind of see how that works once those conversations are being had. All right. Any more questions before we wrap up the Q&A? You like this, huh? I appreciate that, sir. Thank you. All right. Any other questions? We do have couple more minutes if anybody has any questions. So what I think would be great, if you're willing to stay a little bit longer, it would be helpful if we can maybe type some of this stuff up to kind of get your information and then